this is an amazing segment because that was exactly what I wanted to talk about next. This
Perfect.
legal entity that you're talking about. What is it? Maybe you can just give the TLDR of it.
Yeah,
What is it called? And
it's
who
yeah,
should use it?
it's called an RCO. It started as a joke because we tried to describe it, and we like, okay, what is it? Well, it's regenerative community organism, because it's pointing towards regenerative business paradigm, business that is, a way to do business that is conducive to life. So it's actually connected to life, not just extracting things. And then it's community because it's governed by human beings, and there's a certain element to it where humans are part of it. And then it's an organism because we look at it and we see it as a living thing, just like I consist of living cells, and I'm this thing called human being, calling itself Nils. Then an organization today is primarily human beings. We could look at them as little cells or maybe organs when they group together, and because they are living, then the thing, the company is a living organism that might also have its own will, if you will, and a life cycle. Like, what if they are born? What if they mature? What if they start sending energy back to their ecosystem? What if they compost when they die instead of just a few people getting rich or, uh, company going bankrupt, whatever it is? What if there's actually a composting mechanism to it? So it takes a bit of time to go through the details of it. I can give a high level outline. If anyone is interested, there's a website and a GPT at rco.life.
Nice.
And there's like podcasts and all sorts of stuff around it, and articles. But in essence, it has three main components. It's driven by purpose, and the way
Just to be
that,
clear, so
yeah,
this is like a legal form instead of an LLC. If I start a company tomorrow, this is something I could choose to do instead of an LLC. Uh, is that the setting?
yeah, that's the setting. What's unique about it, which I'm really grateful to Mushrooms for, is they gave us a pattern that we didn't have to like create something that's entirely new and then lobby everywhere around the world for it to be approved. It's basically taking pieces that exist already in almost all legal jurisdiction, which is one or more limited companies, private companies, uh, one nonprofit association. Those are the two main building blocks. And then if you add the life cycle thinking to it, it's all modular, by the way. So it's not one thing. It's like you can adapt it to different contexts and you can choose different parts of it. But if you add the life cycle, then at the end, you also need a foundation, a time-limited foundation. And those three entities exist in most legal jurisdictions already. The only thing we do is we put them together in a particular way. So that's why we believe it's viable in most legal jurisdictions. We've only tried it so far in Sweden, and there were no hiccups whatsoever. It's like, yeah, it works because we're not doing anything that's going against anything that's in the current legal system. But at the core of it,
So
it's really, yeah. Go
before you have like
ahead.
this, so a normal company is just a company, and then you have now instead you have the company part, you have the non-profit part, and then you have the foundation part. How
The
does the
foundation,
foundation and
yeah,
the
no,
non-profit?
yeah. Let me try to explain it then, without turning this into like a 3-hour conversation around this specific thing, and we're gonna lose
Yeah.
everyone who's listening. But first, it's for uh, the human being, whether you're an entrepreneur or investor or just person who wants to be an employee at a company. It's for the person who is driven by a purpose that goes beyond maximizing profit. Like, if your purpose is make as much money as possible, then the RCO is not for you. If your purpose is something else, the RCO might be relevant for you. So it's looking at money. It's not against money or making a profit at all, but it's just looking at that as means to something else. It's means to an end. It's not the end goal. And so it's resting on kind of three pillars, where one is purpose. And in our model, we strongly recommend to formulate your purpose not as a statement, but as a question. So this for us shifted everything. This is like 2 years ago when that happened for us. After working, me and Amit, we have this transformation lab, and we also have an AI startup. We're doing all sorts of stuff, but we've been working together for I think 8 years or something, 7 or 8 years. And 2 years ago, we realized that something shifts profoundly when your purpose is a question rather than a statement. And if you want to use metaphors, instead of your purpose being a mountaintop you're trying to reach, it's a horizon that moves with you, that you're never going to reach, but that will always be relevant and important for you to move towards. So the way to do it is to phrase a question that you care deeply about. And if you care about it deeply enough, then it will basically give you infinite energy to work towards the question, because you're never ever going to solve it in your lifetime. For us, the question for the first RCO that we've set up is, how can we transform business to create a world that we want for our children? So I have kids, I might have kids. We care deeply about them and future generations. So for us, and we know the business world, and we see that we really think it should change. We really think it needs to change. So for us, it's just, we're never running out of energy, because we're not working on a solution, we're working on a question. And there's multiple layers to that. It kind of gives you, it makes it more natural to work through the scientific method, rather than I've passed the 20 startup mark in how many startups I've been involved in starting, and then I stopped counting. So I've done this a few times, and the logic that finally appeared for me after it took me way too long to see this, but in the startup world, is that the logic is that it's not scientific. Like, we've had the scientific method for quite some time, but the logic in startup land is not that. The logic in startup land is you have an idea, and then you pitch the shit out of that idea. And that's not the scientific way of doing it at all. You're basically trying to convince everybody that you're right, but you can't know that you're right. But to get the team and to get the funding and to get the attention, it's like create a really good narrative. And that's, we do pitch training. It's like, this is how you structure your deck. This is the story you need to tell. And stories are important. But from a societal point of view, the fact that we're betting on stories rather than anything else doesn't really make sense. And then go figure, you have like 95 or 92% failure rate on startups because they were just stories. They were just good, well-structured stories. And then the logic of the investor is that, well, if the story is good enough, then someone else will think it's good and invest as well. And then I can have an exit. And it's like, I don't care about if it works. I care if I get the money at the end or not. And it's not supporting society. But if you have important questions instead that are important to society, then that's to us a better starting point. So that's like pillar 1. Pillar 2 is to combine 2 different kinds of logics and put them in conversation. So one is the for-profit, the business logic, private company. Like, it's there to do things and make money so it can keep doing more things. Like, that's a certain type of logic. And that's where you find the people that, the entrepreneurs, etc., with that type of drive. But then there's another logic, which you'll find more in a nonprofit association, which is all about purpose. And what we do in the RCO is just connect them. So they are connected in a specific way. I'll skip the details for now. So like, if anyone is interested, there's tons of information on how you actually do it, but they are connected at the hip, if you will. So they are forced to be in conversation. There's like a constant conversation that needs to be going on between them. So the nonprofit owns a little bit of the private company and have some special rights, but I'll skip them for now. What's interesting in that part is that imagine this visually, if you are visual. Imagine that you have a point in the middle, which is the question. That's kind of we call it the question horizon. That's the important question you're trying to answer. Then you have a circle around that point. That's a protective layer. That's the nonprofit association, which has members. So human beings go into, and if they care about this question, they can become a member in the nonprofit. And then connected to the nonprofit, you connect an LLM that's trying to answer this question through a business. It's like, yeah, like for us, we have this AI startup called Coherent, which is basically exploring, well, we think that human collaboration is really fundamental for the business landscape. If we can make that deeper, better, in better connection with ourselves and each other, maybe we can change business, and maybe that will create a new world. So it's just one hypothesis, right? So each startup is just a hypothesis. We don't know it's going to work. It's worth testing. And if it works, fantastic. So that sits like on the periphery of the circle. It's connected to the nonprofit, but it's its own circle. But then what you can do in the RCO is you can have multiple private companies doing completely different things, but towards the same question. So it could be, it could be a consultancy firm. It could be this AI startup. It could be an events company. It could be yada, yada. And, so all of a sudden what you can actually do then as entrepreneurs is something that you rarely can do today. Because today we fight for attention and we're trying to like recruit, join my team instead, or like give me the money instead. Or it's like, if you win, then I kind of lose. So even if we're, in the impact space, we're still having that logic. It's like, I still want to win saving the world. It's like, yeah, great. What if we collaborate instead? Maybe that would be better. And the RCO allows you to do that. So it's not saying everyone goes into one company. It's saying you do your thing. But if you're committed to this question, this purpose, then you can connect to the RCO. And you're in this kind of mycelium or network of companies working towards the same goal. And then quite obviously that becomes like a network or a community in itself. So if your startup fails, well, it's quite likely that if something else works, then you're already kind of connected to those people. You already know,
right?
Like, there'll be new opportunities there. And the third, so that's the second part, like the interconnected legal entities. And the third one is the life cycle, which I've alluded to a little bit, but we're basically saying that the company goes through different stages, just like a plant growing in a forest. And at certain points, the plant will stop just extracting energy out of the soil and also start giving back, because that's the healthy ecosystem. And we translate that in business terms too. As a company, you can basically say, hey, I want to do the life cycle thing. And you translate it to business terms and say, like, when we hit a turnover of 5 million euros and we're whatever we decide ourselves, whatever feels right to us, and we're cash flow positive or neutral or something like that, then we say, now we're in a maturing phase. Now a little bit of our energy will start sending back to the center. So we send it back to the question at the center of the entire structure. And then that protected layer of the nonprofit association can say, oh, now we're starting to get financing here, funding. How can we use that to explore this question even more? Is it to fund more companies? Is it to start a conference? Is it to do research? Whatever it is. And that's how it goes on. And then eventually, if a company dies, then certain energy go into the middle. And then if the whole thing dies, which it will, because everything ends at some point, that's when the foundation comes in. So we basically say, well, there's no energy left in the system. No one cares about this, or everything's gone bankrupt. Like, there's just no reason to have this particular RCO running anymore. But if there's still resources there, if there's like energetic residue, if you will, there might be money or shares or, resources to a sufficient level, then the nonprofit association disintegrates and instead starts a time-limited foundation that has a specific volume of time, or like specific time, to just redistribute all the remaining funds into the surrounding ecosystem at that point. So it's just like the tree falls and then turns into soil, and that energy allows something new to grow at that point in the future. It's the same. It's just the same. We're just mimicking nature.